The battle for the mind of North America will be fought in the video arena.
All right. Well, hi, Max. How are
Hello.
you doing?
I'm feeling great. How are you doing?
Hey, that's good. Yeah, I'm doing good too. Yeah, we first met at the West Hilton Hotel, where Danielle Smith held her Alberta Next panel. It was a shit show. I'm pretty sure everyone who was there, yeah, you would know it was a lot of moderation was very bad. There were people just, going off the rails, throwing temper tantrums and everything. But overall, I think the turnout was good. Like, I guess in terms of like independence-minded people, especially in Edmonton, right? NDP stronghold. The like I will say, like, I guess like the NDP crowd, it was definitely more of like a very loud minority, and you could sort of see that during the straw polls and like just like the sort of cheers and boos that people would give. But yeah, which was kind of reassuring, right? The conservative base is still very strong
Very
and
strong.
resilient. Yeah, in Edmonton, right? But yeah, why don't you introduce yourself? And I guess, yeah, today's topic is, squared around us like being, first generation immigrants. So yeah, I guess why don't you start off, where you were born, I guess what you remember about your upbringing, and when you came to Canada and then Quebec, and then how you ended up here in Alberta.
Yeah. So my name is Max. I've been here in Canada for 25 years. My parents moved here in 2002 from Chile, and I lived there in Quebec for about 20 years. And then I moved here to Alberta in 2022, in December 2022. That's where I drove across the country in my little Corolla 2013 stick shift, by the way.
Mm.
And I drove across the country to move here to Alberta, and the hopes to find a better place to stay with better values that was having Quebec as well too.
Yeah, and you were talking about that, right? And I guess after my introduction, we'll get into that of it. Yeah, so I was born in Iran originally. You know, I wasn't when I came here to Canada, not for my own choosing. I was 9 years old. I didn't my politics weren't really formed up until I was say 12, right? Or I guess we're starting to form. And I guess back then, living in Iran, which is like a very oppressive theocracy. Like since I was so young, I didn't really my parents would always and parents, friends, family, basically everyone with a head on their shoulder would talk about all these things, but it's still I hadn't really had like a first hand experience, right, like of the oppression and the violence, right, because I was so little and really not involved in much. But now that I'm here and I'm looking back at like what I fled, I'm like every day, like I'm just so grateful. It's such a relief that my parents decided to you know basically flee that like regime, self cannibalizing regime, I should call it. And yeah, bring me to Canada for my future and the like a better rest of their lives, right? I think when we arrived here they were around 38 or so. And yeah, they're both extremely glad and have been able to find like stable careers in the oil and gas industry, which they were working in Iran. And yeah, the more news that comes out, and it's just what's interesting to me is that back like right when I'd come here, like Iran, it was still like some things, it felt like some things were still salvageable, right? Some things could still be fixed, there could be course correction. But then like just literally like by the month, like you just like the massive amounts of inflation and like political violence and like unrest, and you just look at it and you're like, whoa, like it's deteriorated so much, like the middle class is completely wiped out. No one wants to invest there. There are so many sanctions on pretty much everything, because of Iran's conduct on the international scale, threatening to nuke random countries. Right now they're selling all of their oil, like I guess, I don't know, like, and it's like a gray market. Iran has so many like natural resources, right? It's like kind of like a Venezuela case where they're blessed with all these natural resources, but the people actually living there don't get to see any of it, right? It's basically all being spent on this nuclear program and like sponsoring terrorism all over the area. None of these things that are like wanted by the Iranian people. And so yeah, looking back now, but I guess in Canada the issue that we're faced with is more of like a regional divide, right? where I guess in Iran, a lot of people, wherever whichever region of the country you're from, has a grievance against the regime, and wants the regime to be toppled. Here in Canada, it's like, it's very much regional, right? It's, conservative, areas, especially the prairies, that are, at the behest of the Eastern voting blocks, right? That are more populated, that want exactly the opposite things that we want and what we value, right? And so that kind of has created like a tyranny of the majority, right? So to speak, when you have a central government that, because of the numbers and how the things are, has to pander, to Ontario, to Quebec, to the Maritimes, but not nearly as enough to, Alberta or Saskatchewan. And, we've seen that basically, right, the last 10 years has been like the most egregious, right? Or I guess I wouldn't say the most egregious, but the most like the one that has been at the forefront of people's mind, right? There was also the NEP during the 1980s, which was like disastrous, even more so than climate
National Energy
policy.
Program, hey?
Exactly. Even more so than the climate policies that have, hampered our industry today. But I guess, I guess people have now realized that like this sort of thing under Confederation is inevitable, right? Whether it's like a bad spell that's going to come every few years, is that like this could happen anytime, right? The sort of thing where a government with a mandate that's against Alberta's best interest could always come in, because, we're not the ones that are, despite us not voting them in, right? And that goes into like the regional divide. And why don't you sort of get into that a little bit?
Basically, what happens is about the regional divide in Canada between Eastern Canada specifically. I can sort of talk about that because I lived there in Quebec for a significant amount of time. What tends to happen in Quebec specifically is that I will tell you the Quebec side of things here. What tends to happen over there is that they have like a cliche in Quebec, which is the English narrative type of thing. What I mean by that is because of the language barriers, the Quebec people, unless you work in IT or finance or if you're a business owner, you're not going to get the information in English at all. The information you're going to be exposed to will be in French. That's first and foremost. And because of that, there is a culture within Quebec, and Quebec itself. They have their own culture in the sense that they listen to specific type of music, they do certain things, and yada yada yada. But if you expose them to the American lifestyle, if you expose them to the Western Canadian lifestyle, if you expose even Ontario for a long time, and still today, there is a divide between Ontario and Quebec when it comes to doing things. There's still some sort of rivalry between the two, right? So basically, what happens is that in Quebec specifically, because of the identity that province has, that created a lot of tension. They basically isolated themselves into this province called Quebec. When my parents moved here to Canada, and like when we're trying to move here to Canada, my our assessment and our description of Canada is that there were like 20% of the population who speaks French and 80% of the population who speaks English. That's how Canada was sold to us, right? And you go like, well, why should I bother learning French, right? So what ended up happening was that I didn't know at that time that 20% of the population of Canada speaks French, but they're in this massive block called Quebec. Okay, so there's definitely a culture component over there in Quebec that it's very different from all the provinces. They act as the little country. Okay, you see more Quebec flags than Canada flags.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a known factor. If you go to any building, you're going to see more Quebec flags than Canadian flags over there. If you move west, like Ontario, Manitoba, all those Western provinces, you're going to see the predominance of the Canadian flag
Yeah.
more over the provincial one. So in 2011, I was in Saskatchewan, and the only place you can find the provincial flag was at the legislative building in Regina.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's it. But anywhere else, go to U of R, go to U of Sask, is all the Canadian flags. You almost don't see the Saskatchewan flag over there. Now it's
Yeah.
changing, but that's another
Yeah.
culture as well too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Really?
definitely changed, right? Like the Safeway I go here in Edmonton and Riverbend Square, it's like it's transformed, like, and it's such a breath of fresh air. Like sometimes, like as you're seeing like big Albertan flags like hung around on top of like local products and stuff, and it's
Oh,
like
nice.
really really nice to see. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Freezing Bros does it, and it's just it's been like a sort of I guess it's like something that I've been working towards. Is I want people to encourage more, Albertan businesses specifically to fly the flag, right?
I got
Um,
my Alberta flag in my studio, not his because this is my
yeah,
office space, but in my studio on my living
yeah. Let me
room, I have that's where the Alberta flag is.
here. I'll just put this one here. Have the I don't know if it's in frame or not. Let me just.
Yeah,
There we
absolutely.
go.
I
There we
see
go.
over there.
A little bit, yeah. Um, but yeah, I guess. Um, yeah, it is. It's definitely been a bit of a fresh air. But the thing is, and like the illusions that I like to draw between Alberta and Quebec is that not illusion. I guess like the comparison is that like especially for people that may be independence minded but are like a bit shy about it, is that like these people have been like working towards this. They're in Quebec for so long. Like their provincial identity prevails over their Canadian identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that like I don't know if you know Joe Clark. He held like a minority conservative government. Like, and what his argument was that like Canada as a whole is essentially like it's like a it's a big patch of land with like sort of like somewhat sovereign sort of territories within it, right? It's not this sort of it wasn't intended to be like this sort of central government with the hegemony that imposes their will on everyone
Mm-hmm.
else, right? And
So,
yeah, it's only Quebec that has really like I guess been like has garnered that original vision of Canada, so to speak, right? And like you said, and it is for a reason too, right? Like they're very much different, right? Their values, the their culture, um, their identity, like it's all like very much different to what I guess not. I wouldn't say the rest of Canada because compared to Ontario and the Maritimes, those provinces are still quite progressive, and I guess the prairies are the opposite of that. But they're very like as in like I wouldn't put when I say the rest of Canada, I wouldn't put them like all under the same umbrella. But yeah, they are very much different to other territories in Canada, and yeah, and because of dangling the threat of separatism, they've been able to have their own way, right? Ever since the 80s, essentially, right?
yeah,
When Quebec wants something, it gets it, like always. And that's the thing
yeah,
for me
because
is like,
because they can't afford to lose Quebec. That's the
yeah,
thing. This
hmm
is one of the things that I criticize a lot, and you and I are probably here long enough to criticize how the government works at this point. I would say that whatever there's a provincial a federal election,
hmm
and I can tell you from a guy who used to live there. Whenever there's a federal election in Quebec, the issues around Quebec are essentially what? Climate. How are we gonna address the climate emergency,
oh
which is
geez,
all
yeah,
fake? How we're going to address the French, the distinction between French and Canada. That's another thing that gets debated. If you listen to the English debate versus the French debate, I listen to both. There's a huge difference. I want to talk
hmm
about the French debate here. What has been the focus? What's been predominantly in brought to attention is the so-called climate emergency. We're gonna die because of the climate emergency. That's one.
Mhm.
The second is the language divide, and how basically the parties in question is going to acknowledge Quebec as a different province. That's number two. Number three, immigration. Number four, economy in general, that sort of thing. So usually we go on a debate. These are the topics that are basically put forward in a French debate. If you look at
Mhm.
English debate, that's not so much as the French part that much. We're gonna see more like a more Canadian fits all debate, like
Yeah.
economy, um, climate boiling, if you will,
Yeah.
security, that sort of thing. So I
Yeah.
think that because of that, you're going to see a lot of the votes in Quebec getting towards what they call the French connection, which is basically the French culture component, how Quebec is different from the rest of Canada. If you listen to the French debate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very much like, yeah, they want, like I guess it's a kind of like thing of like federal, or I guess profitable federalism, so to speak, right? Where they want to
Yeah,
garner all these benefits and all these
yeah,
subsidies, at the behest of the rest of Canada. But at the same time, it's like, oh, well, okay, we don't actually have to comply with you on, full bilingualism. We can upcharge English students. We can make the Anglophones like feel, completely just like ostracized in society, because there's a threat of losing our language or whatever. We can do all of these things, and you guys have to keep paying up, but at the end of it, you won't have to leave, right? Or I guess we won't be leaving because of this. And the what like my hopes are that, Quebec does essentially have a referendum vote on the issue of separation again. I know
that's
it's
not gonna happen.
but
That's
I guess you say that, but I guess like the provincial bloc is polling very high, right? And that's one of their mandates, I think.
No, okay. So let's talk about for a second. Um, so let's talk about for a second about the separation movement in Quebec specifically. It's basically the opposite of what Alberta has as the separatist. I couldn't even call separatist, called the independence movement. To be honest, this notion of separatism is it's kind of vague and
Mm-hmm.
weird. Let's talk about independence here. So what Alberta is doing as a separation movement is based on the idea that we can we can we can get better off by living. We can be better off by leaving Canada and become his own country,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. But basically, living confederation, it's far better than staying in Canada. There are
Mm-hmm.
economic reasons, there are
Mm-hmm.
financial reasons, there are probably identity reasons too. That's been in the works, I guess, at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And also because there was the abuse from the Laurentian elite in
Mm-hmm.
the Ottawa region. That is
Mm-hmm.
what is actually pushing the independence movement here in the province of
Mm-hmm.
Alberta. In Quebec specifically, their current form of independence movement is about DEI, guys masquerading as ladies, full woke, full electric bikes, EVs, that sort of thing. So you're gonna get a socialist slash communist country, but it's in French.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I guess. But I
And I
mean,
look at the polls right now, and I look at the polls. About 65% of the people under 34 are completely rejecting the idea of independence in Quebec
mm,
because they see what's going on with this country, right? They see the rise. They see what's happening. They have the same. They see what's going on in this country. They can't afford a home. They can't raise kids. they have to work three jobs in order to barely survive. And by the way, just in case this is completely related here, this is about finance here. When you pay your credit card in Quebec, when you pay the credit card in Alberta, I think it's 2.5% of your of the balance you have to pay. That is your minimal payment in Alberta, and pretty much the rest of Canada. In Quebec, because they're charging 5%.
Mm.
So their minimal payment over there is twice what we have here in Canada, the rest of the country. Just food of thought here.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, and I think they also pay a lot of provincial taxes in Quebec too. Like their tax, yeah, it's like, yeah, around,
15%?
usually, yeah, we say like, here, like most of the country, you're taxed at around like 40 something percent, maybe in the low 40s, like of all of your income. Like if you're like especially if like a family, if you're like a 2 income like family, or like you're making like around $150,000 a year. But in Quebec, it's like easily half, maybe in some cases more than half. It's like, it's
15%,
crazy.
15% tax. That's what you pay on your average bill over there. And a funny thing, if you have your TELUS or cell phone bill, which are not with a billing address in Alberta, if you have a cell phone number in Quebec and a cell phone number in Alberta, on your cell phone bill, you will be paying the provincial tax and the federal tax on your Quebec line. But with your Alberta line, you'll pay only the GST,
Yeah.
even though your billing address is in Alberta.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That is very
So
odd.
you have 15% tax. The business tax over there is horrendous. I was told, basically, I was talking to many people in the business community before I moved here, and I say, if you want to start a business in Quebec, you're literally insane.
Yeah.
It's that bad.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, and I'm not even against like I guess like a tiered tax system where like if you're like making like a whole lot of money, maybe you pay a higher portion of your income than like someone making like, $60,000 a year. But it's like, it has to be reasonable. It has to be to a point where you're not like driving away all this investment, right? That's like where people can actually start doing stuff, right? Where, there will actually be like capital flowing in to the region to, actually make stuff happen, right? People talk about, I'm all for, making sure that the rich pay their fair share of taxes and whatnot, but it's like, and, but at some point you have to realize that the people with money are the ones that are bringing in all this investment that's, that operates so many things, right? If you like, look at what's happened to, like in England, in the UK right now, where they've built up this like massive service economy, right? Basically, like especially in London, right? Made to like, I guess, service, the upper echelon of people, right? That are like, million, like people that are like millionaires and billionaires, essentially. London's been their playground. And now all of a sudden they're just going ham in on just like taxing them like way more than they usually do. And even if you want to do, like, it has to be gradual. Like, you can't just, if you think that the rich aren't paying their fair share and whatnot, first of all, like, you've already dug yourself into that hole when you've made this service economy that's like catered around servicing rich people, and now all of a sudden, like, you just want to tax them out of the wazoo. Of course they're going to leave, right? And yeah, investment environments are, I know you can like speak to that, but like, what are like the provincial because we talk a lot about Bill C-69, but like, what are like provincial like environmental regulations that like prevent like projects, like energy projects in Quebec from happening, other than Hydro Quebec, of course?
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's good. Good question. So Daniel Smith was talking about the fact, and she talked in the she talked about that in the at the Alberta Next panel in Shore Park about equalization and how calculating the how natural resources are essentially used to modify the calculations for equalization. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Do you know that Quebec has more natural gas than Alberta has?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. During the provincial election, the last one in 22, just before I moved, by the way, um, and previous um, elections as well. But it's particularly the last one because in the last provincial election, we actually had a conservative provincial party. It's called
Mm,
the yeah. So basically, the conservatives were basically saying that we can actually tap the natural gas at the Anticosti Island from there. That has more natural gas, and that's one of the largest deposits of natural gas in Canada. They have another one up in the north as well, but that's the main one. If we tap that natural gas to do all sorts of cool projects with that, in amongst that generate electricity, but not necessarily that, we can they don't need equalization money. They can basically pay money by themselves. And not
yeah.
only that, because of that, if they were to tap those natural resources such as natural gas, and they will have to actually contribute to equalization,
Yeah.
not getting money. So whatever Mitchell Vassar is pointing that $13 billion, whatever the graphics is, that is equalization money they're getting in. They will have to pay. I don't know the extent of how much they have to pay back to Canada, but it's a significant, a huge amount. And
Yeah.
not them to not getting any money from the other provinces as well, too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
very
that
broken, right?
so
Yeah.
that
Hydro.
is so
Yeah.
basically again, basically Quebec has lots of natural gas, a
Yeah.
lot of natural gas.
And even if, say, they don't tap into that, right? The way that the equalization formula is set up is that Hydro-Quebec is a crown corporation, right? And
Yeah.
I guess the way that they generate their energy, they don't like the revenues that they generate isn't considered in the equalization formula, like unlike the revenue that's generated here in Alberta by oil and gas, right? And so their stated fiscal capacity is like very low, and because of that, they get massive payouts in equalization. They
Oh,
had
and the one thing about Hydro Quebec specifically is that yes, a crown corporation, but if you want to get electricity in Quebec, you have to go through them. There's no
yeah,
other way. Like in Alberta, you can select and well, the grid and the power generation is kind of different in Alberta. But I digress here. The important thing about Hydro Quebec is that they branded themselves as a crown corporation, but they basically sell electricity below market prices.
yeah, yeah, and that goes back again to the equalization formula, right? Had they I guess been like actually competitive in the market in terms of like actually having to make a profit and whatnot, and that would like that would go into the formula and what that would do is basically drastically lower how much Quebec gets in equalization. No, you don't think so? Well,
Well, because
I mean,
because
why
what
else would
happened
they sell below yeah, like market
because
price,
what
right?
happens is that a lot of the electricity because what happens is that Hydro Quebec actually sells electricity to large portions of New England, like New Hampshire, Vermont, New York
Mhm.
State. They sell a
Oh,
lot
so
of
is that where they draw
electricity.
most of their profits?
I don't know about the balance sheets, but basically they sell a lot of electricity to the states at regular market prices.
Mm,
That's basically their cash cow. So they're not making money out of Quebec people or Quebec customers. They're making money out of United States customers and industries in Quebec. The biggest customer of electricity in Quebec specifically are essentially the American market, but also the aluminum market up in
Mm-hmm.
the north of Quebec, because they use a lot of electricity to make aluminum.
Mm-hmm.
They have those vats full of bauxite, which is the mineral that's been used, and they basically shuffle a lot of electricity to make electrolysis out of it, and that is what makes aluminum from that. That is a process that is very, very, very energy dense. It's
Mm-hmm.
you need basically substations or the power to generate that amount of electricity that is required to do
Mm-hmm.
aluminum. And also because Canada's aluminum is largely coming from Quebec, from my understanding. I might be the numbers, or I might be wrong on the numbers here, but basically the aluminum sector in Quebec is very large.
Mm-hmm.
So when Donald Trump is saying we're gonna tariff your aluminum to whatever percentage, that is basically destroying a lot of jobs in Quebec.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Yeah, and it's definitely like a very bad situation, like on the whole tariff stuff. But like, yeah, he's wanting to, he can. I guess I don't want to say he can sense weakness. I don't like giving him. I don't want to be giving him psychic powers or
Yeah,
whatever.
you talk about Trump here.
Yeah, yeah, but like
Yeah,
he, like
yeah, but he's a
if he,
business guy.
yeah, if he like notices like a government is like very spinal, like sorry, very spineless, like the liberals have been, and they barely can like put up a fight or do anything, like he will you know yeah, like people have been saying, bully them and essentially try to get as many concessions from them as possible, right? And this is what the people voted for, right? I guess, yeah, Carney essentially just he could drop the vast majority of the counter tariffs that we had on the US, which is fine. That's actually a good thing, because those counter tariffs would have hurt Canadians more than they would have American, or sorry, yeah, Canadians. They would have had more impact here. But at the same time, it's like his negotiating team, like no one takes them seriously. Like
Yeah, he was being
literally,
replaced by a house plant. You seen that?
yeah, yeah. It's just like, oh
What a
geez,
loser.
yeah. It's, oh man, it's, yeah. Literally, you can replace them by a house plant, like his cabinet.
Isn't that humiliating?
Yeah, it is. And like Trump is like, he, I guess he had a gripe with oh, what was that liberal lady's name? She's in Calgary. Oh, I can't even remember. Anyways, but yeah, like what's like he's now noticed that like a lot of the negotiating team is just like the same people from the last Trudeau administration he's had to deal with. And so I'm sure that's definitely playing like a pretty big factor into it too, right? And Carney himself, he's I think 97% of his like assets are in like through Brookfield are in like US companies anyways. So, or it's either 97 or 93%. And so it's like this whole thing of like dropping the counter
That,
tariffs.
that's the ones that we do know. What about the things
Yeah.
that we don't know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That stuff is like, yeah, it's like the amount of, it's definitely like, I don't know if you could definitely go, I guess make a point with the Carney's like recent balance sheet, like in terms of his like assets and holdings, that like it's not really in his favor to like make any like drastic actions that would favor like the Canadian economy over like the US, because like if you were again like what he's invested in, it's benign, especially right now that we're in like a trade war with the US and China, right? Like the EV the EV tariffs on Chinese vehicles that we don't even sell here, that's basically China's been using as an excuse to tariff Canadian industries, like canola that we actually export a lot of to China. Um, it's benign, and I guess their response so far has just been going on vacation and just making sure Parliament is shut down as long as possible, so that
I just can't wait.
the corruption scandals aren't A, given into question, and B, also that Carney is just the I think it was like a week or so. I think after, yeah, I think Parliament, which was adjourned for about 150 days, and then right when after the new government came in, and like Carney's just like a laughing stock essentially, like in the House of Commons, and
The
it's definitely in their
government is running on autopilot mode. Isn't that interesting?
yeah
I just can't wait. Even though Pierre Poliver doesn't have a good standing on Alberta independence. Let's put it that way. That would not change the fact that Canada, as it exists today, is a broken system masquerading as a psyop. And I don't think that at this point of time, there's anyone can be convinced me that it's worth salvaging at this point.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Basically, that's going to be like the same picture all over and over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy, and I put them on Twitter as well, on Freedom Canada's Twitter account, is that I'm so happy for him, for Poliver to win, because it's going to melt some leftists. It's going to create a short circuit on people's brains.
Yeah.
And also make Mark Carney sweat like Mr. Michael Burns, like Mr. Burns, like this up guy,
Yeah.
That's fine, Jello.
I guess, to the Conservative Party's credit, that was still happening even when Polyev, wasn't MP for the brief period of time. Like, when Carney came back in the Parliament, was actually in Parliament, for the first couple of weeks, it was just, they were being grilled so hard, it's not even funny. Like, and again, that's with the official opposition leader missing, essentially, not there to like grill him properly. But now that Polyev is back, I guess, like you said, he's not, I don't take issue with him being against independence of Alberta specifically, right? Of course, he's a federalist, that's fine. But I take issue with that he hasn't gone on record to say that he at least, I guess I don't know how to phrase this. He is on board with at least giving Albertans like the outlet, or like to vote on this, a referendum question, so to speak, that like such a vote should be held. Like, he's just vehemently against anything regarding Alberta independence, even like if a vote were to be held in regards to it, which is kind of a double standard, right? He would never go out and say something like that about Quebec's independence, right?
No,
because not only have they already had 5 referendums already from the 80s, the other issue is that, like, again, he would alienate so many Quebecers to the point where like it wouldn't even be worth it. Like,
exactly.
like, he has to pander to Quebec way more than he has to Alberta, right? Especially since the conservatives want to have a bigger foothold there. And
absolutely.
It's definitely like a major double standard that he's had. And I definitely hope that he's like, someone questions him on this, specifically how he feels about, a referendum question in Quebec and how he feels about one here in Alberta. Yeah.
And quite frankly, what happens is that in Quebec specifically, the push towards independence was basically from the 80s and the 90s, having read a lot about the subject, and it was basically cultural and basically economic to some extent, and also because they were fed up in Ottawa. They were saying, why should we depend on Ottawa? That was the sentiment back then in the 90s and 90s. Right now, the independence movement actually was hijacked into this woke DEI, green agenda, climate emergency type of independence. So, and basically the guy who is driving the show, I don't know what's this guy's name. Whatever, doesn't matter. The guy who is running as the leader of the Parti Québécois, he is basically a guy in the 40s. And he wants to do, and the last picture I've seen of him, he was mingling with drag queens.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't know. Did you see the one Carney at the Vancouver parade.
Oh, yeah. What I kind of admire about Alberta and well, Western Canada and Quebec, the difference is how Alberta was able to do and accomplish a lot of things because of how strong the grassroots really is in Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
They want to get rid of somebody at the provincial level, they be able to do it. They want to raise awareness of a specific subject. In this case, Alberta independence. Albertans will do it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
they want to move their province in a different direction. Albertans can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing. There's no such thing in Quebec, at least not that I'm aware of. So that's why the pushback from the elite is so much harder here in the province in Alberta,
Mm-hmm.
because Albertans are the ones who usually fight back against this whole tyranny.
Yeah.
In fact, it was people from Alberta who started the convoy in Ottawa.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So basically, there's a culture shift in Quebec. I'm not saying that they're not fighters or anything, but the the mentality over there is not necessary to fight politically necessarily as people do here in Alberta, at least.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely. I don't. I feel like yeah, people out east, like exactly what you said. Unlike Albertans, they're very apathetic. They just go into like a don't care mode, right?
But
They,
that's what Quebec really is, and quite
yeah.
frankly, they cannot deserve what they voted for.
Mm-hmm.
And in a sense, there's no things like Take Back Alberta in Quebec.
Mm-hmm.
There's no things like APP, not necessarily APP, but there's no group or social groups in the province to fight back. So people are essentially left by themselves. So what they do is that if they're lucky, they set up little farms. They live by themselves, they live by themselves. But other people, they just leave. And I
Yeah.
remember in the last month or two before I moved here to Alberta, people actually drove here. I was talking to a lot of people in the freedom community as well after the provincial election, and many of them were essentially working on an escape plan.
Mm.
So basically, they was like, "Oh, what if the conservative lose? What's going to happen to me? Well, I'm going to sell my company and buy." Other
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, I sold my house. I'm moving to Florida." Another
Yeah.
guy was like, "I'm basically right now living on a fifth wheel, and I'm moving towards Saskatchewan, yada yada yada," because of this apathy that's happening in Quebec. So whatever tells people in all those freedom groups in Alberta, whatever they call, I always tell people that you are essentially the only reason why Alberta is Alberta in this current form, and in the
Yeah.
place where it's in current form. When people say that Alberta is the last bastion of freedom, it's not an understatement. It's literally the
Mm-hmm.
last bastion of hope that we
Yeah.
have in Canada. And basically, everything that happens with the convoy, with uh, um, helping people at the grassroots level happens in Alberta. And a lot of people I know are in the process of moving here just for that specific reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. You're very right, and you know this is always like very much like this whole fighting back against tyranny and transgressions against Alberta and government exerting its control. It's always mischaracterized as, oh, we're picking fights. We're picking, like, that's what people have been saying about Danielle Smith. It's like, oh, the moment she started, she's been picking fights with everyone, because well,
That's
if
the
she
end.
didn't, yeah, if she didn't stand up for what she's been standing up for, Alberta would be a pushover, like a complete pushover.
Yeah,
We wouldn't
absolutely.
be like the other provinces, right? We wouldn't actually, stand like what she's done recently about the industrial carbon tax. She's basically halted it in Alberta. It won't, like, they despite the government's ambitions in Alberta, she's made it very clear that it won't be raised like by a single cent.
But don't you know that we're gonna die because we
Yeah.
don't pay carbon tax, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and it's like, and then, you look at like what's been happening in the US and just the amount of coal and other energy infrastructure that they're like speeding up on, like the amount of like if imagine like Canada were to hold itself responsible to cut back the emissions that the US is now generating more so by the year, it's like it's crazy. Like you can't win that fight ever. Like you just cannot. This whole like, you know, emissions per capita essentially don't matter. You know, you can be like, oh, we emit too much carbon for, you know, our population. It's like that doesn't matter when other countries are only going to be like, especially in the foreseeable future at least, right? Like up until the 2040s, like, you know, US, China, Russia, they're only going to be investing, you know, in these like fossil fuels and like energy infrastructure more so, and like streamlining all these projects and fast tracking them so that they can assert like energy dominance. And all you're doing is just like not only are you like not going to have an actual impact on emissions on the global scale, you're just going to set Canada backwards and behind every other country by like a long shot. I think even Europe actually exempted a lot of their heavy industries recently from the industrial carbon tax, like specifically like steel and aluminum. And
let's talk about energy for a second here, because this is kind of like the talks with Quebec as well. Basically, Canada is a very large, and they have multiple regions, as I call it, right? Each one is independent from one way to another. Quebec has a lot of hydroelectricity, and that is what keeps things up and going, if you want, right? If you notice that in Ontario, they have a lot of electricity, not hydro, but a lot of electricity is being created by hydro and nuclear as well, right? In Quebec, it's primarily mostly hydro. Now, because of that, everything that runs in there is electric. Everything runs electric, on electric grid, everything. So basically what happens is that you're going to see a lot of the EV markets over there. People are buying EVs over there much more than we do here in Alberta. In fact, my brother actually worked as an electrician in those EV plants, if you will, right? And basically what happened is that the government is subsidizing large sums of money, because even Ford, the Ford car company, didn't want it to build a car factory, a battery plant in Quebec. It only took the Quebec government for them to subsidize large amounts of money from them to decide to, okay, we're going to make batteries here in Quebec. Okay. So basically what happens is a lot of the push towards EVs, electricity driven cars and all that stuff, they all primarily come from the east. From Ontario. It's the same thing, because they have a large electricity production. They can afford to do that to some degree, unless you live up in northern Ontario. You're essentially screwed over there. It's all not run by natural gas, and like we do here in Alberta. So basically, Alberta and the West provinces are built on natural gas. Like 90% of the electricity in Alberta is made out of natural gas. Like little natural gas is pumped up the ground, and that's how the electricity is being generated in the province. You can't run hydro here. You can't.
There's just not and you know, which is what's insane about these blanket kind of like net zero policies that Ottawa enforces on the whole country, right? Like, you know, like if say like Quebec and Ontario could you know, fare better with having their electricity grid turn net zero by 2035, but in Alberta though, where we're so much more reliant on natural gas, like you said, 90% of it is impossible. It's quite literally like a pipe dream. And Danielle Smith, she's actually not even against net zero, which is what's interesting to me. She's like, okay, like at least have like realistic targets, like at least go on to 2050, right? That's where like a lot of people, countries in Europe, that's like their goals are. That's where their projections state. But like, you know, these people are just like, no, again, a blanket kind of thing. And there's a whole other thing with what's it like EV? Yeah, the EV vehicle mandate, right? Like in I think in Canada as a whole, right? This we sell around 25,000 thousand electric vehicles a year, right? So next year, starting from next year, 20% of those sales, by the dealerships have to be electric, right? And that 25,000 figure, right? Companies would have to sell 25,000 vehicles in Alberta alone, right? With 1/8 of the population of the whole country in just 1 year
Isn't that a joke?
than they do right now. It's like, it's benign. It's crazy. It's like, I don't know. Like, I genuinely don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know. It's so much of this policy. It not only hasn't ever been thought out, it's pure activism is all it is, essentially.
It's basically lunacy on steroids. That's all it is. And this guy, Stephen Gibault, which happens to be a Greenpeace activist, he climbed the CN Tower and he harassed, I think, someone at the Alberta government or something. I'm not fully sure of that. He is, in fact, the reason why he's pushing those things. And that's kind of like the reason why, if you want to see what Alberta independence really is to get rid of those lunatics in Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
In Ottawa, they have this top-down mentality where everything gets decided at the top level, which is in Ottawa. And we're going to tell you guys, little guys in Alberta and Saskatchewan, how we do things, regardless of how the province, how the province is physically built.
Yeah. Regardless, of like the province's strengths and weaknesses, just let's just roll out the net zero agenda like on the same timeline as everyone else. It's like, it's the same thing with I guess like do people really expect India and China to become net zero as they do, as I guess they're projected to, like in the Paris Climate Accord? Is like, no.
Give me a break.
But then, yeah, exactly. It's like, but those are developing nations, right? So we need to give them more headway. We need to give them more leniency on becoming net zero. Well, the thing is, why not here in Alberta, right? Like, our industries and in Saskatchewan, they're so much more reliant on, oil and natural gas and like coal and whatnot, right? Why aren't we given that leniency by the federal government, right? Even if you're someone who wants to phase it out, like realistically speaking, like you have to be thinking about these things that every province isn't at the same starting point, right?
What kind of convinced me into this debate of choosing natural gas or oil products over lithium batteries is the ethical component of it. If you look at natural gas production in the prairies, at least in Alberta, I don't very much in the prairies in general, they are made in such a way, natural gas and oil, but especially natural gas, is being extracted in such a way that is the least disrupted for the environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The least.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. In regards to like because our oil is like our tar sands is like hard. It's very like, it has a lot of it has sulfur and whatnot in it. I guess compared to like the Middle East, like in the Persian Gulf, like a lot of the extraction that goes on there, it's very light. But in terms of like that sort of hard like tar sands, like Alberta's, like the efficacy and like efficiency and like, I guess, reducing the carbon emissions, like we're doing literally the best job in the world in terms of like the kind of oil that we have.
Oh, like, yeah, and in regards to that, those batteries that you put in your little cars and your little EV cars and all that stuff, they dig something called cobalt.
Yeah.
And you know what actually happens with that cobalt? Little kids in Rwanda and Uganda take those things out of the ground with their bare hands at age 7.
Yeah. Oh,
Just saying. Just saying,
Yeah,
the
it's
econ
yeah.
the ethical component is really lacking
Mm-hmm.
whether you're making EV batteries. I'm not against EVs in
Mm-hmm.
general. I like the concept of an electrical car. Let's put it that way. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that the technology that's been deployed is so disruptive for the
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
environment. The
Mm-hmm.
mines that have been using to liquefy the material for EVs is basically neurotoxic. Flies cannot fly over there. Birds cannot fly over those mines because of
Mm-hmm.
how toxic that is.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
imagine.
So basically, and in contrast, we have in Alberta a very decent, a very clean way of making natural gas, making oil. If you go to Highway 20, on the way to let's say Drayton Valley and Highway 20, you're going to see that most of the pipes for natural gas are in the middle of nowhere, up in the bush, and
Yeah.
you barely see any pipes whatsoever unless you go to a pumping station down there,
Yeah.
and it's very clean. It's You barely see the pumps, you barely see anything. It's clean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like amazing the amount of care that those guys, they make sure that when the extraction is done, it's done properly
Yeah.
in a way that is clean for the environment. You can see walking deers up and walking up on top of those things, right?
Yeah.
You can actually see wildlife
Yeah.
going next to pumping stations, and
Yeah.
nobody cares, and it's clean,
Yeah.
right? Compared to lithium batteries, which are a complete disaster. I mean, the amount
Mm-hmm.
of basically, and you're subsidizing that with taxpayers' money. That's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, this whole EV mandate, it honestly just feels like the government's now trying to get a return on like all their failed subsidies on like these EV plants and whatnot. It's like, yeah, let's just
Yeah.
yeah, let's make sure this does not all of this doesn't go in. It's like kind of like a sunken cost fallacy, right? Where it's like, oh, we've already spent all this money, right? Let's force all these EVs onto people, instead of actually backtracking. But like, yeah, you're right. And these environmental considerations, like they are very important. They have to be made, right? That what you're doing is like uh as is causing like as little disruption as possible, right? To and what's interesting is I think like the regulations that we had under like the Harper days, like the environmental regulations and whatnot, is that like if you compare energy projects under that were undergone during that era and the energy projects afterwards, like after Bill C-69 and all that, it's like the difference in like environmental impact and like even emissions, it's like it doesn't exist. Like all these policies have done is just drive away investment. Like they haven't actually been like clear, like they haven't provided actual clarity, to these energy companies like on their like environmental regulations. They've made things so vague and so obscure and just basically up to the whim of like, whatever First Nations I guess tribe can just come in and just dispute things and put everything in like the regulatory hurdle for like years and years to come. And
Yeah.
it's done literally nothing except nothing for the environment. All it's done is just set us back from the world stage, right? All it's done,
Yeah.
while all these
And
other countries have progressed and made all these basically I guess nation building projects, whether it's energy infrastructure or whatnot. We've just been here sort of, I guess, sitting like on this like perceived like moral high ground that we have because of these like super unrealistic environmental standards and policies that we've imposed on ourselves for like no reason.
yeah, absolutely. And that has the problem with that is that it sells facts, false expectations on the and basically the governments are trying to do the psyop that if you don't go electric, you're gonna kill people because of the climate emergency.
Yeah.
we're gonna die because of the climate emergency. Oh
Yeah,
my
and
god.
yet they don't ever actually, they always shy away when it comes time to actually break down the, I guess, like the emissions that are generated from just the building of a car, like an electric car, and just how much pollution that creates. But just because it's not coming out of the tailpipe, it's justified for whatever reason in their minds.
Yeah. And quite frankly, there's a lot of byproducts from the refineries, right? Primarily, there is a lot of byproducts such as sulfuric acid is
Mm-hmm.
one of the main byproducts. A lot of the sulfuric acid as well. To I don't know about the other ones, but I'm not a chemist. But one of the things I can possibly think of is nitric acid, sulfuric acid, uh, ammonia. I guess probably
Mm-hmm.
basically basic chemicals that can be used in another way. So it's not like you're burning something, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very. I think that Alberta, if you were talking about identity, yes, it's one of the things that Albertas can be proud of is the how the petrochemical industry really was something that can be used as a identity item, just like Quebec has with electricity. Alberta can take pride of the oil sector life, especially in Alberta in the winter time when it's -50 outside, where there are people literally freezing to death in Edmonton. That
Mm-hmm.
been downtown. We'll talk
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Yeah.
Basically, at least they have some people working there in the oil patch, making sure that the natural gas flows. So basically, we have heat in our houses, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, and I guess I would direct more of that identity towards like the fact that like not just like heritage, like I've been talking to people about Alberta identities and the sort of like influx of settlers and whatnot, whether it was from Europe, Ukraine, after the Civil War, from the US.
Oh, oh, that's
Yeah.
funny. That's funny. Look, I was in Saskatoon in May, I believe, but about end of May, and I record a event in Saskatoon from a small group like APP, but in Saskatchewan, it's called Unified Grassroots, and they
Hmm.
were talking about identity in particular. And one of the things that came out of the meeting was that basically identity in Saskatchewan was more like um, settlers from Ukraine, particular specifically, who fled Ukraine in that time because they want to basically the same thing that we're fighting here. Essentially, they were escaping a tyrannical government in Ukraine. They fled literally across the globe to move here, to move to Saskatchewan, and that's what's happening right now again, right? So
Yeah.
that's a very interesting data point.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the prairies like just like the people that yeah, either took refuge and like settled here, a lot of them, whether it was World War II refugees or Holodomor refugees or Holodomor, I don't know how to pronounce it. Um, the sort of yeah, it's a lot of like people that were, much like I guess people of like my cloth, so to speak, right? That were under these tyrannical regimes and that genuinely wanted to like be in a place better for themselves, right? And
Yeah,
I guess if you were to, I guess, which I wouldn't, there's definitely all, historical heritage and like, I guess, how do I,
and
yeah,
don't
like
you think that
background and like where people come from, it's always important, right? As like a unifying thing. But as
yeah,
like even broader than that, I think like Albertans, like we can take pride in like the fact that, yeah, we actually stand up to shit when it starts to go awry, right? We're not complacent like the nanny state that is Nova Scotia or the heathens in Quebec or, Ontario or like, we're not a province that's solely about, keeping up this facade and, making sure that we have like a perceived moral high ground above everyone else, right? Like when we see bullshit, we actually call it out and we actually fight against it always,
Oh,
right?
if you're in Nova Scotia, you can move to Alberta and you can walk in the bushes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You can literally, yeah. And look, what's crazy to me, just think about had that happened in Alberta, like there would be another trucker convoy like 2.0, like way bigger,
Oh
way
yeah,
bigger
yeah.
than what happened during COVID. Nova Scotia, what are they even doing there? They're so complacent. Even now,
Well,
where it's like I think one
okay.
of like the indigenous tribes were granted to go in the woods. It's
Well,
become like a racial thing.
they're fighting back. Let's be realistic. They're
But I guess it's to like the extent, right? It's like how
yeah.
much bullshit can you take, right? And like I feel like their tipping point is like way higher. Like, and
Mm.
unless like cops are like coming and like knocking on everyone's door and like stripping them naked and like looking in their colons to like find stuff, like people aren't gonna like do something really meaningful against this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that with something that distinguishes Alberta and cannot differentiates the western provinces over the eastern ones, which is that, and this is something I talked with some people at church as well, too, if I recall. People are waking up to this mess that is the elites, how they call, not necessarily the Laurentian elites, people who are above them, right, who are pulling the strings, right. And basically, what happens is that a lot of people are gonna wake up in a different way. Some people wake up with the scamdemic.
Mhm.
Some people woke up with the trucker convoy. Some people will wake up from the climate emergency.
Mhm.
Some people are going to wake up to the next current thing, and the next and next and next current thing that will happen. You know, maybe if there are some people who are not necessarily awake during this pandemic or during the convoy and
Yeah.
such,
Or maybe
but they're
during
there.
even like the Epstein stuff in the States, right?
Yeah. So there are people who
Yeah.
want to wake up to some extent, right? So I don't. So basically, to those people who are not in our side, like the elbows of people, the little Fabio people, and also some, they will eventually come to our side.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
once they start to realize that their beliefs are based on nothing, that is where we're gonna see the change moving forward, and that is
yeah.
primitive competence. So that's why I don't blame them. I don't blame about that, because they know they're gonna change eventually over
Mm,
time,
yeah. That's a good
and
way of
they're
thinking about it. But I
yeah,
think it's also dangerous in the sense that by the time we're there, like I guess trust in like social institutions and like federal frameworks is going to erode completely. Like it won't exist. Like Canada may as well have fallen already. Like if no one, like if you've gone to the point, through all this tyranny and whatnot, to the point where literally no one trusts what you're telling people or the things you're enforcing on them, and they couldn't give less of a shit about what you have to say, like it's over. Like it really is. Like it's like those and and then at that point it's also it gets dangerous because of like, okay, well, if trust in all these institutions all of a sudden drops, what about like actual, I guess, like the actual, I guess, I don't know how to say, like moral, not righteous, but like the well-meaning parts, right, of these frameworks that don't aim to oppress people, right? They're also gonna like the trust in those will erode as well, right?
just
And
the science.
yeah, basically, and everything will just fall. This is the whole measles thing, right? Had COVID vaccines not been forced onto everyone,
What a bunch of
right?
baloney that is, eh?
Yeah, had that not been a thing around the COVID vaccines, again being forced onto so many people,
Oh,
by just by ways like there wouldn't have been all this sort of like benevolence towards getting measles vaccines, which were eliminated already. Like measles was like it was a far gone thing, right? And then distrust from what happened during COVID has spilled
Trust Dr.
over.
Fauci.
Yeah, exactly. That sort of distrust has like spilled over to like actual tried and tested vaccines, right? That actually
Safe and
eliminated.
effective.
Yeah, safe. Yeah, exactly. But it's like, I don't know.
That
What do
is
you
the
think of that?
that is like when I hear that phrase, it always makes me laugh. Safe and
Yeah,
effective.
yeah.
Can be more like more elbows up than that, you know.
Mm,
Perhaps
yeah.
let's talk about immigration.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's a hot topic, I think. Yeah, it was. I don't know. The next panel, the things I heard, I think the government, the UCP, the panelists, they really framed it really well. I think one of them was a first generation migrant lady, one of the ones that was speaking. I don't. You were there, right? You remember one of
The
the
Iranian
panelists.
one?
She was. Oh, no, not the one asking questions. The one that was on the panel. I think she was South Asian, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, on the issue of immigration. And like I think it was very concise where it's like, okay, look, we're not blaming immigrants like, so many you people like to mischaracterize us as doing. We're actually trying to be pragmatic about like, okay, the people that we're bringing in, do we actually have, space for them? Can our like is it going to put a massive strain on the frameworks that we have here, right? On the social supports, on healthcare, on all of these things, right? And so let's talk about like an actual, like feasible number of people that can come in. So I think during Harper, it was around 250,000 a year. It was about
How it
point.
is right now,
Yeah,
like
now it's like 2 million, right? It's like 8 times as much. And there's cracks that are being shown, right? In like in all of our um again, like social supports and healthcare and services and whatnot, right? Like we just cannot hold this many people. We cannot house them, right? We cannot afford to bring all these people in while also looking after people that are already here.
oh yeah, and that is on its own a very large topic. Let's stick to the Alberta Next panel for a second here because that is basically a mantra from the left. Oh, you're so mean. You're mean conservatives because you hate immigrants, those
Mm,
poor immigrants. How dare you? You
yeah.
know? And then you have people like you and I say, no, that's total bullshit.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
they get mad because it's real, right? Now,
Yeah.
what happens is the way I see immigration is kind of like a house, you know? If you have a house and you have a guest who, is in need or whatever, are you willing to help him? Yes or no? And there are those people who are for the immigration, and basically they're in them to have somebody in their house. And the rationale is this: are you willing to have somebody in your house that doesn't respect your values?
Yeah. Values are a
Like,
big thing.
yeah, exactly. So if you take if you take an immigrant, for example, and if you want to receive somebody in your house, let's say that the guy is going to your place is a PDF file
Hmm.
or a wife beater
Hmm.
or a criminal who has a
Hmm.
track record of an has a nasty track record
Hmm.
and he's black or whatever.
Hmm.
Are you willing to accept him in your place? Yes or
Hmm.
no? The poor immigrant? Or are you gonna say, no, leave. Don't ever
Hmm.
come to my place, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They've been barely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Screening has been a joke here.
It's been
The
a
last
joke.
few
Like
years. Yeah. I think,
back then I always remember that. Back then, and I was a volunteer in a group in a group down east, which is also immigrants, right? And I'm not gonna lie, immigration has got good things. Has good things. It's just that right now, there's no point of bringing people here. We're eventually full at this point
Hmm.
from a
Yeah,
social
we've been
survival.
overflown, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and not only that, it's been weaponized against people who A are living here, and B people who are essentially immigrants themselves, like first, second, third, fourth generation Canadians. We're talking about the people like those Ukrainians who moved to Saskatchewan about 50, 60 years ago. They're immigrants themselves. Except that right now they're not immigrants in the sense that they're already in Canada. Those people have kids, and their grandkids are now people in my age, let's say. And these are the people who are Canadian at this point, right? So basically, right now with the immigration that's happening right now in the country, it's been A, weaponized against people who are living here. B, it's just merely um, it's merely virtue signaling. I
Yeah.
remember back then, 20 years ago, the immigration process was rigid.
Hmm.
You had standards. You want to move to Canada, you have to have X amount of money to move to Canada.
Hmm.
Otherwise, GFO, don't come here. That
Yeah.
was the standard 25 years ago.
Yeah. Our like
Now,
merit-based system was envied literally like everywhere in the world.
now you
Like
might be,
it was.
now you might weigh 500 pounds, has a massive bird, no head on your head, and basically say, I'm a lady. And you
Mm,
get in because you're transgender. You know that's
yeah.
insanity. The double standard immigration is so preposterous on its own that
Yeah.
it basically flowing people with people you don't want to have in your house.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
If you're from like a third world country, right, and you sort of make yourself like a refugee case that like, oh, I'm queer or I'm of this ethnic minority or whatnot, like it's like that's how people literally they lie about, being gay and whatnot, and they basically get a ride here. It's like it's insane.
have you ever
It's
considered about people identifying as cats coming here?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I mean that's the next step, right? If the government could be like, oh well, these people are being persecuted against, yeah, why not, right? Why not bring them on?
Canada wants to be Canada wants to be a LGBTQ whatever um, asylum country. Let's
Yeah,
talk about immigration in Quebec versus Canada for a
yeah,
second, because in Quebec specifically, they have a huge problem with immigration. In Chile as well, we'll talk about it in a second. But we're not talking about Quebec in general here. Quebec has a language thing. So yeah, they speak French. So the people that want to bring over to Quebec, they gotta speak French. Okay, that's the thing. Now, what those people are coming from right now, they're coming from France. Primarily speaking, they coming from France, but they also come from Haiti. A lot of people in Quebec that I know are from Haiti, and also from uh, African French colonies
yeah.
Cameroon, Senegal, Mali,
Hmm.
Ivory Coast, those Algeria as well. Lots of Algerians in Quebec. So there's a lot of so basically the immigration policy that Quebec is directly tied to the language. Okay,
Yeah.
they will take somebody from Mali who does speak French over someone from Nigeria whose first language might not be English, but they do
Hmm.
speak English very well there. So it's very
Hmm.
common language. So
Hmm.
because of that, those people in those countries will move to Quebec. So basically, Quebec has a language criteria when it comes to immigration. Okay, if you do come to Quebec, let's say you gotta speak French. They will call Francization, something like that. But they basically you're going to school and learn the language. That's how they do things over there.
Hmm.
Okay. I don't know about Alberta or Canada, but the concept the criteria on immigration is very different. So at least
Hmm.
Quebec they have stance when it comes to immigration.
Yeah.
The country where I came from was Chile. They had in the last 5 years a name flux of immigration. Like
Hmm.
like would not believe this country is not prepared to receive. Basically, Chile is not a country that is known to receive people from other countries. Okay. But because the situation in the people in Chile, the immigrants who are coming to the country are basically flying from the north by the desert, and they come from Bolivia, Colombia, Venezuela, which is what's going to happen if the Canada doesn't stand up. It will come like Venezuela, by the way, just saying. So basically, Venezuela, Haiti, Bolivia, and Haiti. These are the 4 or 5 countries that where immigrants are coming to live in Chile. But basically, Chile never had this culture of immigration. They always been like, we're Chilean, that's where it is. You're not like us, GTFO. That's how what they think.
Yeah.
Because of that, their social services are not adapted for an influx of immigrants over there.
Yeah.
And basically, that's what's happening right now in Canada right now. So because of when we have people like, and they're causing massive chaos in Chile right now, especially the Venezuelan gangs are creating massive chaos in the city.
Yeah.
Santiago in particular, which is the capital. So what's happening right now over there is that there is some sort of what people in here in Canada call xenophobic. There's a xenophobia of immigrants.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to note that like even if let's not I guess it's not that those people that came here that are doing these things are inherently evil, so to speak.
Yeah,
but
100%.
It's just they're literally there's nothing else. Like again, things have not been set up for them to be coming in those massive numbers, and so then what ends up happening is they just resort, to doing all those nasty things, right? When you come in here, right, in hopes for like a better future, and then you find out that actually, well, this place that you're in can't support you. Like, of course, a lot of people's first reaction is going to be lash out, right? And so that's a big issue.
And another thing in particular about immigration, and this is something that I was checking on my end as well, is that when you have basically, if you live in Montreal for a while, you're going to see that there is the Italian neighborhood or the French neighborhood or the Greek neighborhood. First, second, third generation immigrants who came here in generation, like decades ago. These are the ones who actually build the businesses, who have basically living the American/Canadian dreams, where you can come here from your country with basically nothing, start a business, create something for the community, and stand up and live by yourself and employ people and that sort of thing. That is the Canada that is kind of vanishing right now. Canada is very anti-business at this point. You don't want to bear to invest your money in Canada at this point. But I digress here. What's happening right now is that the people who are come here to Canada, particularly from India, they are creating ghettos now. They don't. They basically don't integrate in our community as the previous generation once did. Basically 40, 50 years ago, yes, you're essentially from, let's say, from Italy, but basically you're creating a business, you have customers, you by yourself started to learn the language and such and such. Right now, what's happening is that all those people, they come here and they create ghettos, and those ghettos, they are stuck in a bubble. And that is what kind of infuriates me with all of the sudden. You have the unnecessary bashing on the Indians. That's not the point at all. What I'm saying is, if you move to a country, you have to assimilate to the culture of the country. I got people from Quebec. It's in the same country, basically in Quebec. They move here to Alberta, and they expect to be served in French because you're in Canada. No. You gotta speak English. You gotta learn English. I'll refuse to speak you in French, even though I could, because you need to do the effort to speak English. Otherwise, you will not survive here. And by me speaking French or whatever, I speak Spanish. My first language is Spanish, by the way. by speaking a language that you will not assimilate is actually a disservice to you, because you are the one who is responsible for your own integration. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I don't
Hmm.
mind speaking in Spanish for a while. I don't mind speaking Spanish with you, but you gotta understand at some point of time you have to go to the bank and ask for money or whatever.
Yeah.
You gotta speak English. It is not a coincidence. It is a problem where the second unofficial language in Canada is Punjabi. I don't speak Punjabi.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
and
guess it's like it's definitely an issue with the older generation. Like
oh yeah, absolutely.
they essentially, like, a lot of older recent migrants that come here, like they like their children or like their grandchildren, they're like basically their handlers. Like when you want to speak to them, they just point to them and they're like, "Oh, I don't speak English. Go deal with this person." It's like it's crazy. Like it's I don't know, like this sort of thing. Like I don't know, like if the more this happens, like all I will say is the tolerance levels for these kinds of things will just drop.
It's
Like
already
people will just,
happening.
yeah, it's already happened. People are so fed up with shit like this. Well, like, yeah, you should have like good English like proficiency if you like want to
Yeah,
be here in any capacity. Maybe,
yeah.
right? And like the thing is, a lot of like people coming in tourist visas, and you're like, okay, it's fine. You're as a tourist, maybe you don't have to have like impeccable English to come here, right? But then what that ends up happening is they kind of plant their feet here, and they sort of they make up like what I said. They go into like this whole refugee status thing where they like build this case for themselves, and not only do they have not integrated or like they don't speak the language of the region that they're in, they're like doubly even worse than that. They're going to be basically getting subsidies from the government, just like basically thousands of dollars per month, essentially per person. It's like
Just
it's
that.
crazy. Yeah, it's benign, and like housing and like all of this. It's like, oh, it
Oh,
hurts to think about it. Yeah, it's like what was literally like what one of the like lauded as like one of the best immigration systems like in the planet, right? And like what Canada had, and
had
it
in the
didn't.
past.
Yeah, had, yeah, HAD,
Past
right?
tense.
Yeah, and it wasn't racially motivated. It wasn't racist. It was none of those things, right? And it made sure that not only do we have the capacity to bring people in, but the people that we're actually bringing in are like they're actually needed, right? So to speak, like whether it's like it's a shortage that we may have in like a certain sector, or like we want top minds from other parts of the world to come in and like either invest here or run and start building from the ground up here, and to actually and then also benefit not just themselves but Canadian society as a whole, right?
And
It's
that's
like it's
and
yeah.
that is the important point. I want to give an example of that as well too. At some point of time, I wanted to move to the United States because Fidel Castro's son was prime minister. You
Yeah.
know, and those people who think that Pierre Trudeau is Justin's father, f off. That's simply not true. Anyhow, I digress. It's just funny to say because why not?
Yeah.
So basically, I tried to move to the United States, and one of the problems I run into is that you, as a worker, cannot move to the United States. Well, it's very hard to move to the United States if you're from another country, because what they do is that the Department of Homeland Security, without it, I believe it's the HS over there, they have to make sure that if they're willing to hire an immigrant, because to the United States we're essentially immigrants, right?
Yeah.
If you're willing to help, if you're willing to hire an immigrant, you have to be absolutely 100% sure that you have no choice.
Hmm.
Basically saying that if you don't hire this guy, you're going to bankrupt. That's
Yeah.
how severe that is. And with Donald Trump, that's even worse. But
Hmm.
the thing is that they have standards. So basically saying if you want to hire a non-American, these are the rules. You have to prove that this guy is your only hope. like in Star Wars, like, hey, you're my only hope type of thing. So that is the criteria over there for to hire an immigration. Now, what you can do is to start a business over there, and
What
that,
about like H-1B visas? I've heard those have been getting
yeah,
like abused a lot.
yeah, that's my point. That's my second point, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, another possibility will be for you to get an H1B, or basically a type of visa. You have to basically register your own LLC over there, your own incorporation, and you're essentially a foreign investor. And then through the company, you can hire people. And then if you're staying long enough, you're eligible. And the important factor is being eligible to a green card, and then you can get, eventually you're eligible to a American passport. The important word is eligible. Doesn't mean you're gonna get your passport right away, nor your green card right away. But it's just one of those loopholes that been exploited
Yeah.
along the way as well. But that's another our new solution. But the key part is that as an immigrant, if you want to work in the United States, is A, severely more difficult now, and B, the company that you will end up going to, they have to prove to Homeland Security. I believe it's Homeland Security. I'm not fully sure, but they have to prove you're your only hope, basically, type of thing. If you don't have this guy in your company, you're going to close your business.
Yeah.
That's how severe that is. And they have to do like a survey. They just have to do, within conjunction with other departments, they have to do like a survey, say, okay, is there any Americans who are willing to work in that situation? Is there another employee in a 50-mile radius who is willing to potentially move to your work and such, and that's how things usually go in that category. The main problem we have here in Canada is that there is an abuse and a market towards foreign workers. There is I don't know how this called. It's called FEMA or mafia or EFMA. I don't remember what the name is called. But there's basically saying there's basically an effort towards bringing foreign workers in this country, to the detriment to the people who are living here in the country for several years, like myself, or generations, like most of Canadians here, right? So what tends to happen is that is creating an influx. It is not normal that we see 2,000 people lining up at Tim Hortons for a job. That is, I never seen it.
Yeah.
I never seen, when I was looking for
like
a job.
and that's like a dead end general job. And like it's on like the low, like working at like a fast food restaurant like that, whether it's McDonald's or Tim Hortons, like even like if you were to compare that to like other general like entry level like a minimum wage jobs, like that's on like the lower rungs, and like you have thousands of people's.
At age 16, when I was teenager, at age 16, I was basically asking for job, and I was going to grocery stores, Tim Hortons, whatever. And I was the only guy. Say, hey, fill this application, attach your resume, and the manager will call you back if anything.
Oh wow,
that is what it is. That was in 2006 or something, right?
Yeah. Now put yourself in my shoes, dude. Like this job search, I finally landed a job part time. I won't say where, but holy shit! Like the amount of like ghosting and like applications, you should not, in a like healthy society, like someone who's like a youth or like a student like myself should not be going through literally hundreds of applications just to land a general job. Like it's so fucked up.
I have under my belt about 10 years experience in IT. I've done crazy stuff, especially in telephony and telecommunications for a long time. And last year I lost my job, and I was out of job for about 3 months. And during that 3 months, I was looking for jobs and everything. At the same time, I was learning myself a skill, which is video editing and and doing AV
Yeah.
fun. Now I do it part time, but it's good.
Hmm.
Um, but basically, the I was telling people, one of my coworkers at work, he was looking for a job for about a year and a half. Can you believe a year and a half? Like myself, had 10 years under my belt at least, commercially speaking, and I had a lot of trouble getting a job here. Now, just imagine a guy who no experience on the field.
Yeah.
That is absolutely,
Yeah, especially like I guess in like sort of like I know a lot of IT can be outsourced and be done overseas. And you can speak to this. You still need like you said, there are some positions that like you need a person on site doing things. But like in the software world, that's part of why like computer science majors are so cooked right
yeah,
now, right?
yeah. And AI is taking,
Yeah, AI, and it's like yeah,
is taking a lot of the actual programming
yeah,
jobs as well too. I
yeah,
don't know what's the percentage of the I don't know what is the percentage of the code that's being
yeah. I think
generated
I
by
think
AI.
I think like if like decent like entry level coders are still like far ahead of what AI can do, but more and more so like basically by like the week, I would say it's gonna keep AI is gonna keep getting better at like an exponential rate, right? Like people thought LLMs were gonna plateau soon. That has not happened. Like look at Google VO3 and like the things you can create with it. It's like it's crazy. It's
Yeah,
only gonna
absolutely.
get better. Even I think there's still so much to do with LLMs before like AGI even like takes off. That's gonna be like a long while. Like still like
Super intelligence in 2027.
yeah, it's oh
Um,
I can't imagine. That's why like I mean I'm not someone to like push trades onto people to be like, oh, go get a trade, go do this, right? Because some trades I know can definitely do like a number on your body, especially like by the time you're old, like your body is just crooked and it's like squeaking like a door and whatnot. But like at least for people watching, if you do pick a trade or like whatever profession, do something that like you actually need to be there in person for. Like I know
yeah,
yeah, working remotely is like very elusive, and for some like admin jobs you definitely should be able to work remotely. I can't see why not. But yeah, it's like just looking at the future now and like where we're at, like at least
yeah,
yeah, try to do
absolutely.
something that like at least you have to do something with your hands, right? Whether it's in like healthcare or like you're gonna be in a
Like
lab or like
audio stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So that's another thing. That's
yeah,
like leverage your skills, like learning new stuff, like basically learning about sound and connecting stuff. Like I will not talk about private on yourself or not, but Freedom Canada is a business. They made, I mean, basically through Freedom Canada made a lot of the video editing for the Alberta Prosperity
yeah,
Project. Lots of sound work as well too, not for
yeah,
just for you, for other events as well too. And basically through that you have to understand how video editing works,
yeah,
how sound works, how video acquisition works, how audio capture works as well,
mm-hmm,
and can become very intimidating as well.
yeah,
But basically this is one of the jobs that kind of requires you to be on the ground.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, because you have to
You're at all
physically,
the events, right? I see you everywhere, pretty much.
yeah, you
At
have
first,
to
we
physically.
only talked on the Alberta Next panel, but I didn't mention that the first time I saw you was like back in like May 3rd, and at the Edmonton legislature, with the
Really?
speakers. It
You were
wasn't.
there?
Yeah, yeah,
Were
I
you
was
there?
there. Yeah, it
Oh my
wasn't an
god.
APP event. It was just like yeah, it was a independence thing,
Oh,
and it
that
was
that
really
was
good.
that was a lot of fun. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun because many people recorded the event with their cell phones, but because I provided the microphones and the sound system, not sound system, but I provided the microphones and the basic, infrastructure to run the microphones and such, and I was recording straight from the mixer. Then I was able to deliver a better sound straight
yeah,
from the source. So
yeah,
that was a lot of fun. That was very cool, and
yeah, And
that
everyone needs these events recorded, like in this age, right? Like, I know a lot of people were watching, like the Edmonton town hall. They were watching it either live on TikTok or Facebook from the APP page. And
yeah.
you were basically, yeah, you were like the conduit for that to happen.
Yeah, so so I don't know about the seating capacity of that specific venue. I think they have like 300 people in there on prem, and I have 350 on YouTube, 150 on X now Twitter, Twitter, whatever. I have 85, 70 ish on Facebook Live, and the rest was in between Telegram and Rumble. So it was bouncing like it was in the 600 people range. That was very accurate.
Yeah.
And as you were going and as we were doing those projects, those little jobs, eventually you learn your limitations, and also you learn to how to use your. It basically at this point you kind of allows you to push you techno. It push you even harder. Like you learn the mistakes from the previous cut. Okay, I'm gonna do these things even better. I'm gonna do this that way and that way and that way and that way. For example, I learned a lot of my mistakes that I made. Yeah, because I've done mistakes in the Edmonton town hall. I'm not saying it was perfect.
No,
Yeah, I won't say it was perfect, but it was good.
yeah.
But I wish I could have done even better than this, to be honest.
But it's a work in progress, right? Everything
Yeah.
is.
The one
Yeah.
in Braden was significantly better.
Yeah.
It was right after the one. I have some issues, but it was generally very good.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very, very well done. Was exactly what I was expecting to look like, and everything. Like right now, at this very moment, at this speak right now, I'm using my front camera to record the video as a webcam, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I ended up doing, I can't got too much details but there's essentially a network cable, an RG45 cable that is going to my network,
Mm-hmm.
and my webcam is on my cell phone. Is basically emulated on my computer. My webcam on my cell phone is basically being emulated on my computer. So my computer thinks it's a webcam, but in fact, is taking the video stream from my cell phone camera.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I do a similar thing with a capture card. My
Yeah.
dad has this really expensive Canon C5.
Yeah.
It's like $5,000 or something. He's like he collects cameras and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, what I do, like my long format, like non-interview solo videos, I record with that and I have it hooked up to the computer as like a webcam and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So basically, through video editing, you can learn a lot.
Yeah.
And sound as well. You can learn a lot.
Yeah.
And that is what's so cool about, talk about trades in general, is the fact that you need your hands on the ground because you're physically pulling up cables. Like this microphone, yeah, it's connected to my mixer on the back, which is connected to my laptop. Well, my computer. My computer is detecting as a lightning card, right? As a microphone card. So, yeah, I'm talking to a microphone, but Windows is detecting as a line card.
Yeah.
And you get good sound, to my understanding, right?
Yeah.
So basically, people need to, and what's so funny is that.
I guess what you're trying to say, what we're trying to say, is you need to get into something that there's a need for. So to speak. A need for someone to be there, like on the ground. Like, a lot of these, like, elbows up voters, right? They're at risk of that. Like, they're essentially many of them are like paper pushers working for the government, doing like useless admin shit, pretty much. And those people are going to slowly just be phased out, by AI, by all of these things. And
yeah, and not only that, I mean, there are people who are on the elbows up movement who have Daniel Smith as their boogeyman. They have Orange Man Mad as their boogeyman.
Yeah.
But when you outline the facts, and not only that, but when you outline to them how bad we were effed by the system, by Canada, they're going to realize that there's no point of staying in Canada. In fact, if you
That's
speak
the thing, though.
French,
But I think I'm actually more pessimistic. I don't think they will realize. I think they would just resort to gerrymandering and like calling people traitors and like calling them greedy and
yeah,
all this sort of like these
let them,
people.
let them,
They're
let
very
them.
like yeah, they're very incredulous. Like when you like talk about like all the transgressions against Alberta by the federal government. You were at the town hall, right? Like people, like the left-leaning people were just like when Danielle Smith was like, I think one of the
Yeah,
videos was like outlining the things about CPP and whatnot. People were like yelling lies, lies, lies. It's like they can't believe it. It won't go through their head. Or if it
bunch of
does,
people.
it goes in one year, goes out the other. Like they just will not. That's one of the issues is that like a lot of these people like engage in bad faith, and like they just like no matter how many stats and figures you provide them, they just will not take it.
I said that on my Twitter feed one day.
Mm,
And I might have a more optimistic view. I understand it. Some people have a very more pessimistic way of looking at things, but this is what I think. Those people who are on the elbows up group, let's say, basically they are being deceived,
yeah.
and because they have a boogeyman like Orange Man Bad or Daniel Smith, they basically hate anything that has to do with freedom of speech, anything that has to do with liberty, anything that has to do with the conservative values, God, freedom of association, uh, private enterprise, be able to start a business without any kind of constraints. Those people who are on the left side, who are pushing the elbows up narrative, they actually are against that. They don't like people like us who are minding or controlling our affairs, who are capable of doing things. They fundamentally believe that the government should take care of everything,
Hmm.
right? That's their mentality. But because
Yeah.
they have no arguments and they're being deceived, that creates pain in them. That
Hmm.
actually creates some sort of when we're essentially our line outlining why Alberta should separate from Canada, and we align the facts. To them, it's almost like punching in the face. They don't know what to do. So,
Yeah.
like little toddlers, they explode in temper tantrums. They
Yeah.
cry. They say you're a racist, you're a homophobic, you're a transphobic, or whatever phobic you want to imagine. That is, in fact, their coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Now, extrapolate that to the real world. That's why we say that facts don't care about your feelings, because the only thing they have are feelings.
Mm, yeah.
Now, how is that possible? Well, because there are people telling them as well too. There are people telling them that the reason why you're so poor, the reason why you're in this situation, the reason why you were a boy and you changed to a lady and vice versa, the reason why you're living on the bushes begging for food is because there are evil people wanting you to be at this point, at that state. There is a deliberate effort from people above you to crush you down.
Hmm.
That's what they think, and that's where the people who are pulling the strings are telling those people what to believe.
Hmm.
Once they realize how those people operate, it becomes more easy to manage. And what I tell people is, I understand your fears about the current situation. I understand it that you need a place to stay, you need a work to do. Why don't you become a business owner?
Hmm. Yeah.
Why don't you think about running a business? Like you say you're out of money. Perfect. Why don't you start a business? Why don't you go to business class? Why don't you have a product and you want to sell a service, whatever? Why don't you focus on that skill? Give some objectives, clear
Yeah.
objectives that can achieve. And at that point, their mind, their victimhood mentality suddenly disappears.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm telling those people who are not on the outside, A, they will become eventually to our side. But many of the problems they think we're causing them are basically are not even our fault. We are worried. Many people worry about climate change. I say climate emergency, but I'm basically criticizing is the basically what the government is doing to piss us off,
Mm-hmm.
and they're essentially living on the side effects of those policies, right? They're
Yeah.
they're equally a victims as we are.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's why I don't bash them, even though sometimes I trying to contain myself and telling they're stupid. But in
Yeah.
reality, they're not stupid. They're just being lied to
Yeah.
constantly for generations, even when you have, let's say, your parents who are on the left side of the spectrum, they had children, and those guys, they've eventually become leftists, and they have this perpetration, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not
Yeah.
to mention that those parents on the top, let's say, they're the first who will say, "Oh, my kid is trans because she always felt like he's in a woman." You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah.
what's happening. On the other hand, those more conservative type of families are going to get more structure. I'm gonna set this foot on on the head on the table and say, no, this is wrong. This is borderline retarded. Don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's more discipline. There's more structure. And depending if you are on the spiritual realm or not, if you're Christian or not, okay, you're going to give those values to your generation.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying that I'm not gonna say that disabled people are dumb. I'm just gonna say that they at this point of time they are believing lies.
Yeah.
They are
Misguided. Yeah.
believing. So that's why I'm not gonna say they're dumb, although sometimes we tend to think they're. We're gonna say they act. I would say they act dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean they are dumb. They're very
Mm-hmm.
intelligent. Yeah, it's just that if they starting to realize the facts and put the victimhood on your side, if you empower them, it's going to help in the learn right. And I think we're going to get a better situation. That's why I don't. Yeah, and I've seen videos on TikTok. I've seen videos on Instagram of people who are basically ranting about the fact that we should stay in Canada. Yada yada yada. Canada is dying.
Yeah.
Let's be realistic. The whole concept of Canada is a massive, massive, massive psyop that stood the test of time for 157 years.
Mm-hmm.
Once you realize how Canada was founded and under which values, you're going to see that Canada is being built by force, by the Orange elite.
Mm-hmm.
Manitoba didn't want to join Canada in the first place, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Hawaii. If you look at Cathy Flett's speech, the province of Alberta that we know now today was initially the province of Buffalo.
Yeah.
Once the province of Buffalo decided to become independent, like an actual province, because Canada, nothing, and by that time, 1905, you have no emails, no SMS, no internet,
Mm-hmm.
only horses,
Yeah.
and maybe the rail tracks some once in a while. So
Mm-hmm.
doing commerce, doing business, doing politics was very slow.
Mm-hmm.
One they decided to be an independent province. The Laurentian elites in Ottawa decided, nope, no province for you. You're going to become Alberta and Saskatchewan. And that's the final decision. You have no say over it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing that people need to understand
Yeah.
is that if two provinces were not willing to join Canada, that I know Manitoba with L'Oreal and
Mm-hmm.
maybe Newfoundland, I guess, and Quebec never wanted to leave, want to be Canada, and Canada
Mm-hmm.
they've been forced to be living Canada. So this whole concept of Canada that we currently know is based on a bunch of lies. And once people they have to understand this is about immigration as well too. Basically, the reason why Canada is staying this test of time because they believe in a psyop, and also because of that, the idea of Canada in this current form that it is now is not gonna last. Is going to fall under the weight of its own lie and deception. And even in scripture, it says that everything that is made by man will eventually fall apart. That is what what I think is going to happen in Canada. I'm not prophesying or anything. Not on a
Yeah,
name.
I guess like how I would look at it is like to hold together this massive block of land, right, where so many parts of it are basically uninhabited, and it's basically so segregated, right, like in a population density is like either it's going to break off at some point or you're basically going to have to be as like tyrannical as Russia and like
Yeah.
force people into it, like force people into like staying in. Like otherwise it's like gonna fall apart. Or like people like Canada isn't just gonna like hold itself together by goodwill. Like again, like going back to the population density thing, it's just like it's just so like bound to fail, especially now that like I guess our politics are just so much more different. Like I guess regionally speaking, politics have like shifted so much, even more so than they have before. Like in prior elections, it's like it's not. I don't like and Alberta is going to be either Alberta or Quebec are going to be the first domino, right?
I'll say
And
Alberta.
yeah, and everything else will ensue from there, and that's the real issue. The real issue isn't Alberta itself leaving Canada, is that once a territory leaves, a province leaves, like the whole notion of Canada as a country is over. Like it's done and finished.
And not to mention the reason as to why Alberta wants to separate was to become independent over Quebec. The reasons are very different.
It's much more pragmatic, right? Our reasons are like actually like grounded in stats and figures and like what makes like a viable, like an economically and identity to a certain extent, like an actual viable country, not just viable but extremely prosperous, right? Given that we keep the revenues here. Quebec, on the other hand, like unless they change the trajectory of how they want to develop their resources or allow free enterprise, that case does not exist.
Yeah, and not to mention that Ontario right now is technically, I would say right now in 2025, Quebec has a higher chance, a higher probability of success than Ontario right now, because Ontario, and this is something about that probably don't know because you live here in the West. There's always been this sort of rivalry between Quebec and Ontario. Quebec always thought that we are better than Ontario because we're Quebec. We are the greatest. And Ontario has all those own stops everywhere on Highway 401. They have everything. They have all the financial markets. All the biggest banks are in Toronto, like the BMOs, the CITs. They're all based in Toronto. And Montreal has one large bank.
It's like a inferiority complex, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
so
like the same of like how we feel towards the US. Like it's literally the same thing almost. Like how inferior, how we feel morally righteous over the US, even though like in actual real terms, like we're just so easily dominated by them and like dwarfed by them.
I got a chance to travel to the United States because of my job. And in general, because I wanted to travel, I traveled to United States multiple times. I traveled to New York. I traveled to Vermont. There's a good place for the northern. I mean, New England in the United States is a very very good place for hiking. I highly recommend going to the northern side of the United States for hiking. Amazing place in the Appalachians, particularly more Lafayette in New Hampshire. If you ever go there,
Yeah,
highly recommend. more. That's Mount Lafayette, no, Lafayette Park, and that's on Interstate 95, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great potential in the United States. However, what actually forged my idea of Quebec being its own nation is because across my travels, I met people, the many people who spoke French, who had a Canadian passport, were not going to Quebec. They're
Mm-hmm.
going to the States to live there. I met a couple, an elderly couple. They were going to Ontario. I think they live in Ottawa. I met this lady. She was going back home to Texas, even though she speaks French, perfect Quebec French, and she's got an accent and everything and everything. She is actually, in fact, married to this engineer in Texas, and she lives there with him and have some kiddos there. Yada yada yada. So everyone I know who speaks French, who had a Quebec passport, going to YYC, YYZ, or YYC, what have you, the people that I met are barely going back to Quebec to live there, unless just for
Mm-hmm.
family reasons, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And part of the problem that Quebec has, and along with the language divide, is that the mainstream media is one-sided.
Mm-hmm.
Go take your mask. Go wear your mask. Wear your mask. Wear your mask. 6 feet apart. Dr. Fauci, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Fauci. Get vaccinated. Get vaccinated. That
Mm-hmm.
was the mentality over there, because they have, at that time there were no alternatives. Now
Mm-hmm.
they have a very somehow competitive alternative media. Let's give them crew what let's give credit what it's due, to be honest. But for a long time it hasn't been, because most of the media has been paid up by the government over there, by the provincial government, let's say, over
Mm-hmm.
there. I don't know how much they got paid, provincially speaking, but they have two checks, one from the federal, one from the provincial government over there, just to push propaganda over the
Mm-hmm.
masses. And because the people like myself who speak multiple languages are very, I'm not saying they're rare, but I will say that unless you live in Montreal, Gatineau, and Sherbrooke, you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to find people who speak English. I know people who speak English. Not, let's not say that that doesn't exist, but that's normally not the norm. Like
Mm-hmm.
in a business of 50 people, you will find probably 7 people who speak English over there, no more
Mm-hmm.
than that, and their fluency is somehow left to be desired. Um, so basically, the media over there is very one-sided,
Yeah, I can
because
imagine.
there's very one-sided. But luckily enough, the younger generation, at least for what I know over social media, are starting to consume media in other languages, particularly in English, and that is making the leftist establishment over there in Quebec absolutely crazy,
Yeah.
because
Mm-hmm.
they now don't have control over the people there,
Yeah.
particularly the young generation who consume people like Joe Rogan or
Mm-hmm.
um, Jordan Pearson and
Mm-hmm.
maybe Daniel Smith. Those people, when I moved here to Alberta, welcome them.
Yeah.
And the mainstream media over there is gradually losing the grip over the younger generation, over information, to the point those where they can actually make their own decisions. And they
Mm-hmm.
realize how they were put by the system. They realize how many immigrants they have in their in Quebec. Many people who don't necessarily speak French at all.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing. They may speak Creole, but they don't speak French.
Mm-hmm.
They start to realize how the system's being pushed by the edge. How is that in Alberta they pay 5% taxes instead of 14.95%
Mm-hmm.
taxes? Because that's the average tax rate over there. The sales tax is
Mm-hmm.
14.95%. How is I pay 5% over there? Gas is 115 and I'm
Mm-hmm.
here paying 175. How come is
Mm-hmm.
that? You
Mm-hmm.
know? And their brains started to kick in and they realize that, oh, we have been duped.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine, yeah, there will be a mass emigration from Quebec and Ontario. There's already has been from Nova Scotia and Manitoba, especially
Oh,
young
is it
people.
really?
Into
No.
yeah, there's I think
Do
interprovincial
tell. Do
migration.
tell.
Yeah, Alberta takes in the most people that are like in working age, like from basically like essentially like nearly all the interprovincial migrants, like like migration across Canada of like the younger working generation, like most of them have been going to Alberta and Saskatchewan. Yeah, like one of them yourself, right? It's like definitely like a massive thing, and it's only going to get more pronounced once we become independent, right? Like it's even yeah, it's like not only does Canada risk falling apart by letting Alberta become independent, there's also be like massive brain drain and flight flight of investment, even more so than there has been now. But yeah, I know we've gone like 2 hours and 7 minutes from what I've seen. So yeah, do you want to wrap it up, or is there anything else you'd like to mention? Or yeah, you should plug your stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
freedomcalendar.net and everything.
Yeah. So freedomcalendar.net on X, YouTube, Rumble, X, and Telegram as well, and other platforms as well too. But I'm looking forward to work on a TikTok account. I have to figure that out. That's another base I want to work. Also, if you are interested in Alberta sovereignty, there's also a website called abexit.ca. So it's spelled Alpha Bravo EXIT.ca. That is a website on the Freedom Canada website. It's a subsite that allows you to see all the events across the province for independence, not necessarily just APP, but other events as well too. Okay.
Yeah, that's crucial. Yeah, because I think even like the people I've talked to in the APP, like they're in favor of like having like more decentralized events occur like literally everywhere, like even if it's like at like local coffee shops and stuff where you're just bringing awareness, even like groups on Facebook and whatnot. But definitely check that out.
I want to say two things before to wrap this up. One, the grassroots in the involvement in the grassroots in Alberta specifically is a model that is it's the export product. Yeah, Alberta exports oil and gas to the States and all that stuff. I get it. But I think that one of the important things that Albertans need to think is the grassroots movement in the province is way stronger than anyone in the country, anyone in the North America, and should I say in the world. Is very strong, very knitted. And my take on that is keep it that way. And also one thing in particular is that we need people like you. We need people like myself. We need like people like. And I remember a talk with Jason Levine in Stony Plain, I believe.
Yeah.
He basically said, "Look, we're in an information war. They're gonna take people like him, myself, you. So we need more people on the board. We need more people starting YouTube channels. It's not hard, by the way. We need more and more active presence in social media for young people like myself. I'm 35. Okay, I'm basically a professional at this point, I guess. But it's very important to get involved. All branches of all generations involved. All the more, the better. The more creators, the better. That is the number one priority. Two,
get involved and network with everyone. Bring people on your stuff and vice versa.
Yeah, and I subscribe to your YouTube channel, by the way.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing is that there are events as well too. If you are the Whistle Stop Cafe will have an event from Saturday the 30th to September the 1st. The whole long weekend, there's going to be a massive rally of independence over there. That's going to be
Whistle Stop Cafe, you said?
At the Whistle Stop from August the 30th to September the 1st. But September the 1st is going to be the big day. I'm going to be recording that specific 3 days as well too. I'm looking forward to potentially live stream that event. I just have some materials. I need some fiber optic cables to test once they come back from Amazon, apparently. So if everything goes okay, I will be able to live stream that event. But come here because there's going to be a lot of people. We're expecting like 3,000 people in there. It's going to be
Mm,
huge. It's going to be historical even. Just that,
yeah.
and we're writing history, man. You don't know this,
Mm,
but we're actually
for
writing
sure.
history. What the work that you're doing, that I'm doing, and all those people who are out the front, it's going to be somewhere in the reading looks like people like David Parker, Jeff Rath, Mitchell Baster, those
Yeah.
guys. They're going to be in the history book somewhere. So it's very
Yeah.
important to keep the pressure on and
Yeah. I'm gonna see if I can attend. Yeah, it's a good yeah, I didn't even know that. That's great though. It's gonna be a massive rally. And also, yeah, if I think on the August 31st, there's also gonna be like a well, it's not like a independence thing per se, but the Alberta legislature is gonna be holding Alberta Day because I think September
yeah.
1st was when I yeah, if you can't go to the whistle stop, the next best thing is to go to the one in the ledge. So I know I'm probably going to be attending both, right? Since the whistle stop one is more than just one day. So for one of those days, I'm going to be at the ledge.
That's going to be massive, massive.
Yeah.
The whistle stop's going to be insanely massive. And I will say that right now, that's like putting a lot of my efforts, my technical efforts, to make sure to record the best event ever. At least
Yeah.
record it, but if I can live stream as well, that would be fantastic. I have to
Yeah.
use those things because I have to check for a Starlink dish somewhere.
Yeah.
If not, I have to run a fiber optic cable somewhere connected on there
Yeah.
using the media converter. And that's another thing to talk about technical stuff. This is the kind of stuff you have to do when you do video editing and stuff is to think about your equipment. It's no longer a camera with a shooter microphone. It's like, no, you have to do something professional. You have to get ready for everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. But it's good. Yeah. And if you see either of us at either of those events, you make sure to come up and say hi and yeah, like make us aware of your presence, right? Like directly, personally too. That really means a lot to everyone who like does this kind of thing. Like we make videos, right? Like I was recognized at the Alberta Next panel by some guy because I was on Corey Morgan's show like the night before. That really meant a lot to me, and so
yeah,
definitely show up to the whistle stop one. Definitely, if you can't go to that one, like celebrate Alberta Day and whatever
I like
else.
this.
Yeah,
I like this guy, Corey Morgan. This is funny because
yeah,
Corey
he's great.
actually, I have a photo with him, and
Yeah.
he gave me he actually gave me the sovereignties handbook.
Mm.
And I like his sense of humor. I like when he called Thomas Lukasik a sad little man or
Yeah,
Fabio. So
yeah,
I'm like, I call him Fabio because I just can't say his name. I call him
yeah,
Fabio because
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like unrelated. Little Fabio, I will regard. So
yeah. Check out Corey. Yeah, I'd like to
very
have
more.
him on sometime, like on my channel this time. But yeah. Anything else you want to mention, or should we call that a wrap?
Let's kick ass into bubblegum.
Yeah. I'm here to, and I'm all out of bubble gum. I think that's how he said it at the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Well,
yeah,
thanks for coming, guys. For everyone who is watching online on your side as well too, and we'll keep in touch.
yeah, for sure.